G'day, watch this.
Professor Robert P. George, the McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence at Princeton University, visited Sydney recently as keynote speaker of the John Paul II Leaders Forum. Praised by US Supreme Court Justice and former Harvard Law School Dean Elena Kagan as one of the nation's most respected legal theorists, he is celebrated author of 14 books and numerous articles. I pointed out that the professor argues that it was in the interests of those who supported limited government and the free market system to also support the family as a fundamental institution of society. This was his answer.
What I presented to the group last night was an argument for why people who are concerned with economic freedom ought also to be concerned with the integrity and authority of the family, and why people who are concerned with the integrity and authority of the family ought to be on the side of economic freedom and the market economy as a great generator of social mobility.
I think you summed that up as saying that they'll rise or fall together.
They will rise or fall together. Now, people on the hard left understand this perfectly. That's why people on the hard left are opposed both to marriage and the family as traditionally understood and to economic freedom in the market. They get it. To their credit, the people on the left get it. That's why they attack both of these principles, the family and economic freedom. So often, people on the conservative side don't get it. They imagine that, well, I can support the free economy, but I don't have to involve myself or care much about these family issues, these family values issues. Or there are some people who care about the family values issues who don't think it's very important to necessarily defend economic liberty and the concept of limited government that goes along with it. And I tried to spell out why people on the conservative side should understand what people on the left do understand, that these things rise or fall together. They stand or fall together. If you want limited government, so if you're an economic conservative, you want a flourishing market, you want limited government, you want low taxes, well then you had better support the institution of the family, because the family based on marriage, the union of husband and wife, is the original and best department of health, education, and welfare. There's no government ministry that can perform those functions, the health, education, and welfare functions, anywhere nearly as good as the healthy family. Okay, now that's not to say that every family's healthy or that any family's perfect. No family's perfect, but still, if you consider what government can do and what the family can do, the family can perform those functions much better. Now, when the family breaks down or families fail to form, when we get family fragmentation, large-scale out-of-wedlock childbearing, sexual anarchy producing that large-scale out-of-wedlock childbearing, with the result that fathers disappear from communities, what happens? The family can no longer perform those health, education, and welfare functions, so who performs them? The government. So now government can't be limited. It has to grow. The tax burden has to grow to pay for the bureaucracies that come in desperately trying to make up for the absence of the family, not doing very well, but at least better than nothing, trying to help people who are often in desperate need in this cycle of poverty and despair, drug abuse often, violence, crime, incarceration. So the government's got to grow, and it's got to grow not only to provide those services, and it's got to raise taxes not only to provide those services, but also to deal with the problem of security that arises, because once you have family fragmentation out of control, you get an increase in crime. It happens inevitably. And so government has to grow, the security apparatus has to grow, freedom has to be diminished, taxes have to go up. So if you really care about limited government, you've got to care about the family. If you care about economic freedom, you've got to care about the family. It works the same way now, the other way. For the family to flourish, you cannot have a situation where the state has taken over control of the economy and is taking all the resources away from the institutions of civil society, like the family, the non-governmental institutions, what Burke called the little platoon, and sucking all those resources into the central state. That would leave people without a buffer. between state power and themselves. So families need reasonably low tax burdens, burdens they can actually bear, so that they can flourish and provide serve the functions that they need to serve, and also to enable them to make the contributions to religious and other non-governmental institutions of civil society, which are so essential in supporting the family in its role of performing health and education and welfare functions, and in transmitting virtues and values that are critical to the health of our social life and our democracy to each new generation.
Do you find it hypocritical that the very individuals who are trying to disassemble this family unit are then trying to fill that role and plug that gap in as ineffectively as they do it?
Well, the collectivist mentality always supposes that there's some utopian future. In its purest form, it was Marxism, and under the Marxist idea, there was a dialectic of history that would lead inexorably to first to capitalism and then to the revolution and the dictatorship of the proletariat, and finally the withering away of the state, and we would have heaven here on earth. And there's something of that utopianism even now, though Marxism itself has been discredited, even now in the collectivist mentality. But it is simply a fantasy. And I would stress that the costs for that fantasy are borne not by the affluent, the wealthy. They are borne hugely disproportionately by the poorest and most vulnerable sectors of society, those sectors that are most dependent on there being a healthy marriage culture, a healthy family life, healthy functioning institutions of civil society, both religious and non-religious, that support the institution of the family in the mission of caring for people in need, educating young people, transmitting the values and virtues that make the rest of society functional.